Welcome to the penultimate lecture in my exposition of the literary code of the Dark Knight trilogy. Today we study Batman Begins to develop virtue. As I've said, this movie focuses on the first two cardinal virtues, fortitude and temperance, embodied mainly in the characters of Batman and Gordon respectively. We'll start by looking at these virtues in greater detail. Second, we'll examine how in the hell Nolan managed to write a literary code into David Goyer's original script. We'll discover that David Goyer's original script, which is available online, shows that he is very familiar with the Batman comics and he follows traditional comic book tropes when he develops movies' characters. The Nolan Brothers are neither familiar with nor reliant on these. They're interested in Plato's Republic and John Milton's Paradise Lost, and they write the movie characters accordingly. We've studied some already. Alfred is the wise counselor, as his name implies. Gordon is the bird master, as his name implies, and he's the master of his gut, and the bridle of Sophrosne. Joe Chill is rewritten as a remorseful and pitiable character. Nolan uses this to explore the virtue of justice to the poor, the paupers. Goyer originally intended Selena Kyle to be a lunatic or a lunartic from the Narrows, as her name implies, and Nolan redirected this along Platonic lines. She's virtuous and has appetite problems. All Platonic revisions or redirections of the characters by the Nolans. But we need to go into more detail on Flass, Batman, Rachel Dawes, Thomas Wayne, Ra's al Ghul, and Lucius Fox. We're going to see the same pattern, the redirecting of Goyer's vision into the themes of Plato's Republic. And lastly, we need to cover the Joker. Goyer's vision for the Joker was dramatically altered. OMG. The entire movie ending was given an overhaul by the Nolans. Once we see why the movie's ending needed to be revised, we'll see how the Nolans developed a unique vision for the Joker, the Mephistopheles that Roger Ebert referred to. Previous versions of the Joker are nothing like this one. How did Nolans come up with this new version of the Joker? The huge revisions to the ending of Batman Begins reveals how this happened. Now, let's begin by exploring the virtues. Incidentally, Plato's list of virtues might not be in the Bible on your shelf, but in the Catholic and Orthodox Bibles, you'll find the four virtues listed in the Wisdom of Solomon and 4th Maccabees. I've got them quoted here. They use exactly the same Greek terms that Plato uses in the Republic. Sophrosne, or temperance, is foundational. It governs the belly, but it's very difficult to define. It can be translated as moderate, temperate, sober, sober-minded, sane, discreet, modest, restrained, chaste with respect to one's sexual appetites. In 1 Timothy, the Apostle Paul advises all these things to young and old men and women, but every word you see highlighted in the English versions here are translations of the exact same Greek word, Sophrosne. It's hard to nail it down to a single idea. Plato dedicates the entire dialogue Charmides to attempting a single definition of the term. Now, in the Dark Knight trilogy, 4 connotations stand out: restrained, moderate, and especially sober and chaste. It's the first virtue covered in the training montage where Bruce loses restraint and consequently his footing or foundation. This image is repeated in The Dark Knight Rises when the greedy Gotham oligarchs lose all moderation and consequently the foundations of society eroded and fell beneath them. Bruce Wayne is on a cane because he's losing his footing, the foundational virtue, and if you didn't spot that symbolism, recall that his doctor actually suggests he take up drinking. And if throwing sobriety to the wind isn't bad enough, Bruce throws chastity and sexual restraint aside as well. He's losing his footing, his Sophrosne, hence the cane. The image of Sophrosne as keeping one's footing and foundations is one the Nolans really like, but the classic image of Sophrosne is the woman and the wine. Sophrosne pours out only half of her wine and spares the remaining half. Here's a whole bunch of images so that you guys know I'm not cherry picking here. Now, many people have noticed that during the Harvey Dent fundraiser in The Dark Knight, Bruce Wayne and the Joker share many parallels, one of which is that they drink half their glass of champagne and throw out the other half. That's intentional. It's a reference to Sophrosne. The Joker has virtues, of course, even though he twists and distorts them. Let's just roll our way through the entire Sophrosne, or without Sophrosne, Hall of Shame. First, Arnold Flass. The Nolans decided to depict him as grossly overweight, despite the fact that in the comics he's actually buff and muscular, and the name Flass comes from the Yiddish for whiskey flask or bottle. He's not sober-minded, as Sophrosne implies. Greedy, drunk, overweight, and appetitive. He serves as a foil for Gordon, whose characteristic virtue is Sophrosne. The Nolans added a scene to Goyer's script in which Flass steals cash and a falafel from a food vendor who has kids to feed. In the original script, the vendor was just a covert middleman for the mob, and he just hands a banknote to Flass. The Nolans are highlighting that Flass absolutely lacks the first cardinal virtue altogether. And then there's crooked Judge Phelan boozing it up with hookers, neither sober nor chaste. He'll be replaced by Judge Bentley, who's also a crook because the word bent in the Goyer script is a synonym for crooked.
In a town this big, who's that a rat to anyway?
You really started something. Red cops running scared.
That's another nameplate for you, and we're getting closer to that 70 that I promised in Lecture 1. Lion-hearted Loeb overindulges in liquor, he's dead. Here's Officer Wirtz getting liquored up, he's dead. Shot by this guy who's getting liquored up and losing all rational restraint. Still worse is Congressman Gilly getting liquored up, chowing down, smacking poor Selena Kyle on the ass. No sobriety, moderation, or chastity. Much like John Daggett, who's getting liquored up and oogling Selena in the garden. Speaking of lechery, our stock marketers oogling pretty women, scalping and complaining about every little detail regarding the food. Sumptuous food. That's what the immoderate oligarchs are chowing down on. Speaking of the loss of sobriety and soprosine, we need to discuss Alfred and his Fernet Branca in the third movie. Fernet Branca comes from Sicily and is one of the best known bitter liquors. It's a nickname meaning bitter, unlucky, or disappointed, all of which describes Alfred, who is bitter and disappointed that he couldn't persuade Bruce Wayne to live a happy life. He's literally drinking from the cup of his own bitterness. That bitterness climaxes at the Bruce Wayne funeral where he pleads, "I failed you." Many viewers thought he was speaking to the spirit of Bruce. He's actually looking at the grave of Thomas Wayne. In the final scenes, he's again ordering his alcohol and cup of bitterness. This early in the day, Alfred? For pity's sake. But no, he sees Bruce and Selena, puts his credit card back in his wallet, and leaves his alcohol untouched. He can leave the bitter behind him, and that, my friends, is the symbolic significance of bitter, bitter Fernet Branca. So from the beginning of the It trilogy to its literal end, the Nolan brothers beat the drum of soprosine into their viewers. Now, let's talk about the second cardinal virtue explored in this film, Andrea. I already gave you guys a lot of information on this in the first lecture, and I'm trying not to rehash it here. It's the virtue governing the spirited element or thymos located in the chest. Hence, the script called for revisions to Carmine Falcone's lines in Warnings to Bruce. The straightforward interpretation of it is, from the Greek, is manliness. That's where we get the name Andre from. Hey, do you remember a certain son of man who descended into our world of deception and illusion, only to die a self-sacrificial death and be raised back to life by the love of the Trinity? Of course you know what I'm talking about. Keanu Reeves. You guys thought I was going to say Jesus again, didn't you? Seriously, Neo Anderson, the new son of Andros or Andrea. He's the new son of man. I just thought you'd like to know. Since this is Batman's characteristic virtue, we need to explore the differences between the Goyer script and the Nolans regarding the Batman. Goyer, as I said, follows traditional comic book tropes where Batman is a terror of the night, using fear as a weapon. Nolan doesn't like this. His Batman is the champion of courage, whose principal role is to inspire courage in others. Additionally, Goyer, as we saw in Lecture 1, is drawing from the work of Washington Irving and the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Greed and competitiveness, personified by Ichabod Crane and his long crane's neck, has slipped into the sleepy, apathetic hollow, intent on marrying a damsel in order to get money and land. A lad of spirit uses theatricality, disguise, and fear to terrorize the greedy Crane and drive him out of town. Goyer's Batman is drawn precisely along these lines. By contrast, Nolan's Batman is the enemy of fear. The characteristic words of Thomas Wayne, "Don't be afraid," were added to the script by Nolan. Indeed, they are Thomas Wayne's dying words to his son, and Thomas appears in the third movie to utter these words to Bruce in the pit. Batman is the champion of the second cardinal virtue, not the author of fear. The little boy in Batman Begins is not in the original Goyer script. Nolan is showing us that even little children are not afraid of his Batman. The second contrast on this issue is vengeance versus altruism. Goyer's Batman learns to see past his own pain to the needs of others, but he's still a figure of vengeance on behalf of the oppressed. In lines deleted by Nolan, Roz tells Bruce that Batman has given Gotham a potent fear of symbol and a vengeful bat, an apocalyptic symbol, he says, to haunt Gotham when panic ensues. Yep, that is Goyer's Batman. Those lines were deleted. The line where Roz tells Bruce that grief can be cured by vengeance, that was added by Nolan. Vengeance is Ra's al Ghul's motive, not Batman's. Nolan stated that he wanted Batman, who is in contrast to the Punisher or Charles Bronson in Death Wish, driven by altruism, and he added 2 instances of the word compassion and 2 instances of the word pity to the original Goyer script.
I know the rage that drives you, that impossible anger. Your anger gives you great power.
What stopped it?
Vengeance. Like you, I was forced to learn there are those without decency who must be fought without hesitation, without pity. When you lived among the criminals, did you start to pity them? Compassion is a weakness your enemies will not share. I warned you about compassion, Bruce.
Third, I promised in Lecture 1 that I would talk about the rock climbing contest between Goyer's training montage. Of course, Nolan deleted this in part because he wanted the training montage to canvas Plato's 4 virtues in order. For those who have forgotten, here they are again. Soprosine, he's in danger of losing his restraint and consequently his footing. Fear and Andrea, fear versus courage. Nolan's Ra's al Ghul says that Bruce Wayne fears his anger, the ability to do great and terrible things. And prudence. He has to be shrewd and cunning. And finally, a scene got changed. Nolan's script has Batman faced with the choice of executing justice as death. That's very important. Remember, in Goyer's version, the final test for Bruce was not the executing of a prisoner, but rather blowing out the last candle of hope for Gotham and all of civilization. For Goyer, Bruce returns to Gotham a fully recovered hero. The symbolic climb is complete. Recall that the imagery of the climb was one that Goyer drew in part from the story of Jacob and Rachel at the well, and Jacob's vision of the ladder of divine ascent. For Nolan, Bruce has just begun his climb along this ladder. Nolan will use the imagery of the climb, of course, in the third movie when Bruce escapes from the pit. But for now, Bruce has to master the virtue of phronesis, or prudent judgment, when he faces the Joker in the next movie. Thus far, Bruce has only mastered the second virtue, Andrea or fortitude, in Batman Begins. On the topic of Andrea, we should cover the changes to the character Rachel Dawes, since this is also her characteristic virtue, at least for Nolan, not so much for Goyer. It's also the characteristic virtue of her doppelganger, Father Riley, whose name actually means courageous. In the Goyer script, her name is Rachel Dodson, meaning son of a Dodd, or rascal. When Goyer introduces young Bruce, whose name means out of the wood thicket, in a garden reminiscent of the Garden of Eden, we find young Rachel grabbing him in the Goyer script. What are you doing? Kidnapping you. They'll pay a lot for precious Brucey. She's a rascal and a Dodd from the outset, and there's no arrowhead or finders keepers motif in Goyer script. The arrowhead was Christopher Nolan's characteristic symbol for the third cardinal virtue of phronesis. So precious Brucey bolts and takes a symbolic fall of Adam down a well reminiscent of the well of the patriarch Jacob when he met his future bride Rachel. Goyer's not only drawing from the story of Eve in the Garden of Eden, but its Greek counterpart, the story of the rascal Pandora and her box by 6th century BC poet Theognis of Megara. After she opens a box, he says, "Hope remains the only good god left among mankind, who have suddenly lost all restraint," in the Greek sophrosyne. Hence, Goyer's theme of the candle and the hope of civilization and the problem of greed. Also, recall that in Bruce's training, we see him opening a box from which bats explode, reminiscent of Pandora's opening of the box. Goyer's Rachel the Rascal, or Dodd, needed revision. It conflicts with her role as a shepherdess to Bruce. Remember the story of David, the brave and courageous shepherd boy who took on the giant Goliath? Dawes means son of David. In classic art, Lady Andrea personifies fortitude and endurance and is typically pictured with the pillar. Here again, a bunch of examples so you guys know I'm not cherry picking. Now, if Rachel is a pillar of courage, she can't be waffling between being a brave shepherdess on the one hand and a rascal or a Dodd on the other. This called for another script revision. When Rachel first encounters the Batman, we find her in the movie exiting a train followed by goons whom she's ready to fend off with a taser. In the original Goyer script, Batman delivered his dirt and info on the mob by sneaking into Rachel's apartment at night and scaring the heck out of her. For Nolan, Rachel is not easy to scare. When Falcone gets hit with a panic gas, he sees worms and maggots indicative probably as a fear of death. Batman gets hit and he sees bats. Crane sees Batman transformed into a demon, probably indicative of his fear of Ra's al Ghul. The little boy in the Narrows sees a fire-breathing horse, and lunatics in the Narrows see Batman as some sort of demon. Rachel doesn't see any of these things. She doesn't see anything at all. The only time that Rachel flinched was during her encounter with the Joker at the Harvey Dent fundraiser, and that's because Heath Ledger scared the heck out of everyone, especially Senator Leahy. Ha! Compare his reaction with Academy Award nominee Tom Wilkinson. Who do you think did it better? Ah, rest in peace, Mr. Wilkinson. So Rachel got a Platonic revision, resulting in a more consistent character. A brave shepherdess, not a rascal or a Dodd. Incidentally, Plato would have approved. In Republic Book 5, Socrates argued that women might serve as shepherds or guardians in the state. For, he says, men and women alike possess the qualities that make a guardian. They differ only in their comparative strength or weakness. Nothing that favorable to women's potential for social roles is going to be written again for at least 21 centuries. Now, next, we need to talk about the twins, Thomas Wayne and Ra's al Ghul. The name Thomas means twin, and Goyer stated in a recent interview that he intended for these characters to be foils for one another, twins.
We want to tell a story about Bruce overcoming his fears, and his biggest fear is growing up in the shadow of his father and disappointing his father, and squandering these riches that his father built. So, that naturally led to fear, which is the Scarecrow. And then we talked about, is there someone in the Rogues Gallery of Batman that is a patriarchal character? And the obvious one is Ra's al Ghul, because that's the function that Ra's fulfills in the comic books, so it made sense.
competing father figures for Bruce, but Nolan massively revised these characters and the nature of the conflict between the two. The fact that there are foils should be apparent from the movie. Thomas is a doctor and a healer, Al Ghul is a killer and an agent of death. Thomas is introduced descending from a light to a young Bruce in a well, Al Ghul stepping out of the shadows in Bruce's prison cell. Thomas healed Bruce's broken arm, Al Ghul ignores Bruce's cold arms. One builds and invests in civilization, the other renounces and tries to destroy it. Thomas built a train to unite the city, Al Ghul uses a train to attempt to destroy it, and in The Dark Knight Rises, of course, both of them appear to Bruce in the pit. For Nolan, the central conflict between the two is justice, which is the overarching theme of the trilogy. The Just Man, the original title of Plato's Republic. For Thomas, justice is restorative, building unity and harmony. For Al Ghul, true justice is retributive, vengeful. Gotham must die for sins it has committed. Justice is never mentioned by Al Ghul in the original David Goyer script. Batman mentions the word once. That's it. So the lines where Ra's al Ghul says that if somebody stands in the way of true justice, you just walk up behind them and stab them in the heart, that's a Nolan addition. Thomas Wayne built a train system to unite the city with Wayne Tower at the center, becoming the unofficial heart, much like Thomas Wayne, of Gotham. All of that is Platonic imagery, of course. So what was the conflict between the two according to David Goyer's original script? Goyer wasn't tracking Plato's Republic and the theme of the Just Man. He was merging comic book tropes with biblical themes found in the book of Genesis, notably the Garden of Eden and the story of Jacob and the Ladder of Ascent. God gave mankind a task in the garden, symbolic of our civilizations, listed here in several translations. We are to work it, tend it, watch over it, we're to cultivate it. But mankind has generally failed in this task through apathy and indifference, and society has disintegrated. Brother turning against brother as Cain versus Abel, until God sends a flood to stop the carnage, and then man builds a tower, which is basically a city center, out of arrogance and pride. Society continuing to decay until God wipes out the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, and God finally calls Abraham to form a new society and people to redeem the earth. In short, the garden of civilization is in trouble, and it has an incurable case of the humans. For Goyer, Al Ghul is a cynical civilization hater and an eco-terrorist. The garden of civilization. Don't tend it, just end it. Blow out the candle of hope. Call it quits. He sits by the fire with Bruce and looks at the, quote, harshly beautiful landscape, end quote. In other words, the garden left uncultivated by humans, untended, and he calls it, quote, the world as it was meant to be, end quote. His goal is to end the project of human civilization, which he regards as a failed project. Don't tend the Garden of Eden, end the cities, go back to solitude. Solitude is mentioned 4 times in the Goyer script and always on the lips of Ra's al Ghul. Nolan deleted every one of these. But Goyer's right in line with the comic book depiction of Al Ghul, who is typically portrayed as an eco-terrorist. Ra's al Ghul confronts Bruce at his birthday party in an attempt to lure him back to the League of Shadows. To take power, Bruce asks. Al Ghul replies, this is about saving the planet from man's greed, pollution, and weaponry. But the conflict between Al Ghul and the Wayne family is not about justice. Wayne means wagon builder or train builder, hence he's a civilization builder. Al Ghul is a civilization hater. Moreover, Goyer's Ra's al Ghul is not much interested in killing. That's just collateral damage. He wants mankind to return to a state of nature and solitude. In fact, he's not even out to kill Bruce. He wants Bruce to rejoin the League. During their fight at Wayne Manor after he defeats Bruce, he simply says in the Goyer script, rest easy, friend. He clearly intends for Bruce to survive the house fire. Nolan added the lines where Al Ghul says, in a spirit of retributive vengeance and justice, justice is balanced. You burned my house and left me for dead. Consider us even. In either case, Alfred saves the day when he sneaks up on a ninja with a 9-iron and... Oh, what the heck? Alfred sneaks up on a ninja. That's actually in the movie script. I thought that only a ninja could sneak up on a ninja, but apparently Alfred can do it too. Way to go, Alfred. What up, my ninja? Al Ghul is out to kill Bruce for Christopher Nolan and Gotham. Regarding David Goyer's Garden of Eden motif, Al Ghul is the executioner of the sentence of those that partake of the fruit of knowing good and evil or becoming acquainted with evil. They will surely, the text says, die. For Nolan's Al Ghul, this is true justice. An important symbol in this regard is David Goyer's blue flower that Bruce must carry up the mountain. It's been identified by botanists as the Himalayan blue poppy. Traditionally, the poppy is associated with sleepiness or apathy. Recall, for instance, that in The Wizard of Oz, a field of poppies puts Dorothy and her fellow travelers to sleep. And Goyer, drawing on Washington Irving's Legend of Sleepy Hollow, probably had that connotation in mind. Gotham needed, he said, a dramatic symbol, Bruce says, to shake it out of its apathy or its sleep. But the poppy is also symbolic of eternal sleep, death. That's the connection that Nolan can exploit. Ra's is transformed from a save-the-planet eco-terrorist into an executioner. True justice demands death. And here again, we see Goyer's comic book tropes being revised and rerouted into the theme of the Republic and, of course, the Batman Code. If the twins Ra's and Thomas are thus transformed, then their battleground, Gotham, and the Narrows needed a revision as well. For Goyer, Thomas Wayne is just a good businessman. Nolan revised that so that Thomas is a doctor who leaves business to those more interested in it. He's a healer of Gotham for Nolan. Nolan added the scene where Alfred picks up Bruce in Bhutan and speaks of Gotham going through depression that Thomas Wayne tried to alleviate to the point of nearly bankrupting Wayne Enterprises. In Goyer's version, however, Bruce simply gave Alfred a phone call from Bhutan and said to send a plane. Anything else, Alfred asks? Yeah, he answers. Painkillers. Oh, come on. Christopher Nolan's Batman doesn't use drugs or sex to ease pain. Zack Snyder's Batman does that. Nolan's Batman hardly even drinks. He has soprasine, remember? Let's summarize the differences between the Goyer and Nolan on the twins, Thomas and Al Ghul. Thomas Wayne in summary. For Goyer, he's a businessman, not much of a developed figure. He's just a figurehead for the Wayne legacy of civilization building. And 2, he's not depicted as a philanthropist, but just a civilization builder. No philanthropy. 3, his legacy is otherwise morally and spiritually ambiguous. Bruce struggles with the idea of taking on this Wayne family mantle. And 4, he's generally oblivious to the corruption and decay going on through apathy in this city of Gotham. For Nolan, by way of contrast, he's not a businessman, he's a doctor, he's a healer and a restorer of Gotham, and he certainly is depicted as a philanthropist who built the train specifically to unite Gotham in difficult economic times, and his legacy is not spiritually ambiguous. He's a figurehead for charity, and he's a figurehead for justice. Bruce has to take up this sort of mantle. He doesn't struggle with it or fear it, as in the Goyer script. And generally, he is very aware of corruption in Gotham, and he fights economic injustice, thus becoming the enemy of Ra's al Ghul. Remember, all references to there being a depression in Gotham were added to the script by Nolan. When Rachel takes Bruce on a car ride to the lower slums of Gotham, in the original script, he's supposed to see shadowy figures conducting business, basically thugs. But in the Nolan version, he sees homeless people, and there's a added line where Rachel says Falcone is creating desperation on the part of the poor. And also, the Narrows. The Narrows was originally supposed to be characterized as a place where the hardest of the hard hang out. It was not an economically depressed region. Nolan revised all of this to give Thomas Wayne a battleground on which to do economic warfare against Ra's al Ghul. Speaking of whom, for Goyer, Ra's al Ghul is an eco-terrorist and essentially a nature lover. That's a comic book trope. Not particularly motivated to kill, second of all. That's just collateral damage. Thirdly, his goal is to return mankind to solitude and the unkept garden. And fourthly, he hates the Wayne family legacy of train and city building. He's not particularly interested in Thomas Wayne. He hates the Wayne family legacy. For Nolan, he is a terrorist who wants to stab at the Platonic heart or spirit innate element in humankind. And 2, he is very motivated to kill. In fact, he's an image of death. 3, that death, his goal is retributive or true justice. It demands the death of the cities and the people responsible for all the corruption. And 4thly, this Al Ghul absolutely hates Thomas specifically because Thomas is a man of compassion and has a similar view regarding justice as restorative. They are enemies on the battleground of economic warfare in the Nolan script, not the Goyer script. A few words need to be said about the League of Shadows. Just as Gotham needed to be revised to fit Nolan's vision for Thomas Wayne, the League is recharacterized to fit his new vision for Al Ghul. First, Goyer did not envision the League as some sort of alternative civilization. They are anti-civilization. They're modeled, I think, after the cynics of ancient Greece. Those were philosophers who were complete societal dropouts. They wouldn't form schools, amass disciples, or write anything. That's all a humanesque activity. They hate that human element and society building. Goyer's vision for the League is basically this kind of cynicism gone militant for the sake of Mother Nature. So, the scene in which Ra's tells Bruce that the League is centuries old and has a history and a mission, a philosophy of true justice, that they were involved in the fall of Constantinople and Rome and London, all that was added by Nolan. Also, Goyer's League does not have families. Families are mini societies and the foundations of society generally. They would be anti-family for the most part. So the scene where Al Ghul tells Bruce to warm his chest and then divulges that he was not always alone alone in the mountains but had a wife, all that was added by the Nolans. Goyer's Ra's al Ghul is instead the solitary man. The League sustains itself instead by recruiting people who, like Al Ghul, have lost families, like the orphans in the third movie, who are at work undermining Gotham's foundations. I want to camp on this point a little bit because it's a huge Nolan-esque theme. It returns in The Man of Steel. Peter Lawler, former Dana professor of political science at Berry College in Georgia, wrote a great article online, Reading Plato with The Man of Steel, where he points to obvious Platonic themes. Krypton is a Platonic republic complete with guardians such as Jor-El and auxiliaries such as General Zod. Sadly, it has to be said that Plato did give the guardians of his state enormous authority to practice censorship and even eugenics. Krypton is practicing eugenics and selective breeding, and the fact that the core of the planet explodes precisely when the core of society, the family, is being undermined, that connection was intentional, it was symbolic. The famous philosopher of science, Karl Popper, despised Plato for just this authoritarianism and dedicates the first volume of his work, The Open Society and Its Enemies, to Plato, whom he regards as the first enemy of the open society. Incidentally, Popper spent his career teaching at the University of London, where Christopher Nolan got his degree in English literature. Nolan is aware of the criticism, of course. More importantly, since David Goyer wrote this very Platonic script for The Man of Steel, you can wager that at some point he became aware of and on board for the Nolans' employment of Plato's Republic in building their superhero franchise. At this point, he's no longer working with comic book tropes. Speaking of which, even though the comics depict Ra's al Ghul as having a daughter, it's clear to me that Goyer would not have introduced Talia al Ghul. The problem there is that Goyer developed al Ghul not simply as a comic book eco-terrorist, but as the solitary cynic, in order to put him in direct conflict with the Wayne family legacy, and he's against tending to the garden of human society generally. That development precludes the idea of him having or wanting a family life. So Nolan rewrote al Ghul instead as a vengeful justice dispenser. It permitted Talia to come back into the picture, and Nolan made use of that, of course, in the third movie. One last thing. It's really important for Goyer that the League members seldom, if ever, speak. Now, Nolan held on to this trope. In the first movie, the League members do get one short line.
Time to play.
But by the third movie, he has them talking aplenty. The antisocial motif just isn't very important to Nolan. In the first movie, the fake Ra's al Ghul, played by Ken Watanabe, he speaks, but he's really just a puppet for Henry Ducard. Henry Ducard is the real master of the house. How did Bruce not figure that out? The name Henry means master of the house, and Ducard, that's just a name that Goyer made up. It's French, meaning of the cards. Put them together, he's the master of a house of cards. Gee, I wonder if that house is going to fall. Yep, there it goes. Actually, he'll die in a fall. His daughter Talia died in a fall. Salvatore Maroni took a fall. Harvey Dent died in a fall. The fake Batman Brian Douglas took a fall at the end of a rope. Oh, by the way, Brian means noble and Douglas means dark. He's a noble imitator of the Dark Knight. Just a couple more nameplates for you. He's out, and someone's out to kill Coleman Reese. That's Officer Berg. He looks on edge, probably because Berg means cliff or ledge. He's about to take a fall. That's another nameplate for you. Bruce fell with Harvey Dent and falls in the pit several times, just like he fell into a well in movie number 1. Bruce takes symbolic falls in all 3 movies. Joker took a fall, kind of like Lucifer took a fall. See all these people on the ladder of divine ascent? A lot of them are falling. Wonder if Nolan is trying to prove something here.
He wanted to prove that even someone as good as you could fall.
Subtle, Mr. Nolan. Very, very subtle. In summary, for Goyer, number 1, the League is not an alternative civilization. They're anti-civilization. They don't have a culture, history, philosophy of justice, or anything like it. 2, consequently, they don't have families, because families are mini-societies. The League members wouldn't want them. Thirdly, they rarely, if ever, talk. They're antisocial and prefer solitude. They are the militant arm of cultural cynicism, and might open their mouths on the battlefield occasionally, but that's it. For Nolan, by contrast, they certainly are an alternate civilization with a philosophy and a long history. They are not anti-family, though many of them have lost their families to society's injustices. And third, by the third movie, they're talking up a storm. Nolan's just not as concerned with the no-talking antisocial motif that Goyer had going. I need to go into the theme of the Wayne family mantle, symbolized by Thomas Wayne's coat. It's also referenced in the third movie, as you recall. It's an important theme for both Goyer and Nolan, but they use it in very, very different ways. WhatCulture.com lists the homeless man in Batman Begins as one of the most pointless characters in the trilogy. Is he? That nice coat has a lot of symbolic significance, especially in David Goyer's script. For Goyer, it's the mantle that initially attracts Henry Ducard to Bruce. The Wayne mantle is one of civilization building, and Bruce is soured on civilization. He's ideally placed, Algo says, to become a civilization destroyer. Goyer is again following comic book tropes. He knows that this will eventually be exchanged for the famous mantle of the Batman, and he hits the theme hard. There's even a scene that Nolan deleted where Bruce is spying on the lecherous Judge Phelan while disguised as a homeless man. As Phelan leaves with two hookers, he kicks Bruce, and the homeless man to whom he gave his father's coat tries to intervene, still wearing Thomas's now tattered coat. So Goyer's trying to draw attention to this theme really hard. First, Goyer's exploring the theme of fear. This big mantle fell on Bruce's tiny orphan shoulders, and he dreads it. When Bruce returns to Wayne Manor, he tells Alfred he'd like to tear the manor down brick by brick. Alfred reminds him of these words. It's a legacy of 6 generations, he adds. The Wayne family legacy is not so easily shrugged off. Bruce replies, nor born, my old friend. I'm sorry to have disappointed you. Secondly, it's a family legacy that the villainous Earl wants to steal, and he says he's going to offer shares and make the company public, adding, consider it my legacy. Of course, he just wants to steal the company. Thirdly, it's a legacy that Alfred encourages Bruce not to slough off. Bruce wanted to tear the manor down and his family legacy down brick by brick. As Wayne Manor burns, he sees the error of his ways. What have I done? Everything my father and his father built. And Alfred reminds him that we fall in order to pick ourselves back up again. A couple of points. First, notice the emphasis on the generations-old legacy of the Waynes. And secondly, the symbolism of the fall. Mankind has indeed fallen symbolically from a garden of paradise. Goyer's vision is that we fell in order to learn to pick up our civilization. Now, by the movie's end, Bruce is in a garden again with Alfred, and he resolves to rebuild brick by brick. That's Goyer's theological view of the fortunate fall. Mankind and human civilization have fallen, but it's so that we might learn to pick ourselves up and rebuild. We can't give in to cynicism, as Goyer's Ra's al Ghul would have it. But Nolan, we rewrote both these characters and revised the nature of the conflict between the twins. Consequently, everything I've just covered and much more had to be revised. For Nolan, the coat is not the Wayne family mantle. It is specifically the Thomas Wayne mantle. It's an example of Bruce's fathers, who built a train to unite Gotham in economic hard times. It's a legacy of justice centered around the spirited element located in the Platonic heart. In other words, it doesn't need to be exchanged or transformed into the mantle of the Batman because it already is the mantle of a hero, the mantle of the just or righteous man that Bruce needs to become. The Batman, like Thomas Wayne, will be a symbol to unite. Here's some dramatic examples of Nolan's revisions on this point. In the original David Goyer script, when Bruce returns to Wayne Manor for his birthday party, he knows that he can't stay because the Batman has work to do that evening. Is Fox still here? Alfred nods. Serve the cake and send the guests home, Bruce says. Alfred complies. Here's the original script for you guys to read. But in the Nolan version, we get this exchange instead.
There's a Bruce Wayne's guests out there, sir. You have a name to maintain.
I don't care about my name.
It's not just your name, sir. It's your father's name. And it's all that's left of him. Don't destroy it.
It's your father's name. It's not the Wayne family mantle or legacy that's important. It's the legacy and mantle of Thomas that's important for Nolan. Regarding the first point I made about the Goyer script, Bruce is feeling that he's got a mantle that he can't shrug off and is not easily born. Those lines got deleted. Instead, when Alfred reminds Bruce that the Wayne Manor has sheltered 6 generations of the Waynes, in Nolan's script, Bruce snarks, "Why do you give a damn, Alfred? It's not your family." He says, "I give a damn because a good man, Thomas Wayne, once made me responsible for what's most precious to him in the whole world." Gone is Goyer's theme of Bruce fearing the Wayne family legacy. Faithfulness to Thomas, specifically, has replaced that theme. Regarding Goyer's second point, the theft of a legacy or mantle by the villainous Earl, that had to be changed too. Nolan inserted a boardroom dispute between Fredericks and Earl. Fredericks means peaceful ruler, and he opposes Wayne Enterprise manufacturing weapons for the military, especially heavy weapons. But Earl means warrior prince, and he's all in for profiting from warfare. I don't think Thomas Wayne would have viewed heavy arms manufacture as suitable cornerstone for our business. Earl replies that they can stop thinking about what Thomas Wayne would have done. Get the point? Earl isn't stealing the Wayne family mantle. He's stealing the Thomas Wayne mantle, the legacy of a righteous man. You might think that Nolan would be content with Goyer's third point, that Bruce needs to rebuild that legacy of now Thomas Wayne instead, brick by brick. And he is, but there have been some script alterations so that it's clear that Bruce is specifically raising up the Thomas legacy and not the Wayne family legacy generally. For one thing, the script was slightly altered in the scene where Wayne Manor burns, and Bruce has his epiphany that he can't let the legacy he inherited be destroyed. In the original script, Bruce laments that his father and grandfather built all of that, a reference to the Wayne family legacy as a whole. The words in red were deleted by Nolan. Bruce laments instead the destruction of Thomas's work. In the garden, where he tells Alfred he'll rebuild brick by brick, there's an added element that Bruce discovers his father's stethoscope, symbolic of the Platonic spirited element in the chest, now burned and scarred. How the heck did that thing manage to get burned in the house fire and wind up outside in the garden? Who cares? It's about the symbolism. He's recovering the spirited element of his father. That's Thomas Wayne's real legacy, the mantle that has fallen to his son. In short, Goyer's emphasis on the Wayne family mantle is replaced with the mantle of Thomas, or the Thomas Wayne mantle of the Batman, if you prefer. It's already a hero's mantle, a mantle of justice and compassion. Bruce Wayne's mission in the trilogy is to live up to it. For completeness' sake, there's one character I've overlooked for too long, and that's Lucius Fox. Now, the name Lucius comes from the same root word as Lucifer, meaning light bearer, so he should be pretty bright, intelligent, and the name Fox denotes cunning and intelligence. Actually, in the original Goyer script, he doesn't really come across that way.
Surprise, surprise, surprise!
It's only hinted that he might know that Bruce is Batman, and I'm not making this up, people. How can he not know that all those cool gadgets that Batman uses, especially the tumbler tank, all come from his weapons warehouse? That scene where he appears by Bruce's bedside after Bruce was attacked by a gas from the Scarecrow, that's not in the original Goyer script. In the Goyer script, Alfred drew a blood sample from Bruce and sent it to a discreet laboratory to have them manufacture a cure. And the scene at Bruce's birthday party where Bruce and Fox figure out why the League of Shadows stole the water vaporizer, that was also written by Nolan.
Unless you have a microwave emitter powerful enough to vaporize all the water in the mains. A microwave emitter like the one Wayne Enterprise is just misplaced.
Misplaced?
Originally, Fox just tells Bruce that what the vaporizer is capable of, and Bruce figures out the League's plan all by himself. So Nolan knows that this character is too bright for the treatment that Goyer gave to him. So Fox is on Batman's game early on in the Nolan script, and that, of course, sets up Fox for more involvement in the subsequent movies. All good alterations, Mr. Nolan. I approve. And this gives more significance to his name meaning, and for that reason, I'm counting it on my list of name plays. Finally, I promised you guys that I would cover the origins of the Joker in conjunction with the heavily revised ending to Batman Begins. In Goyer's script, as Earl explains his evil plan to take over Wayne Enterprises to a colleague, Earl says, "We can't have some clown prince running things." Nolan deleted this. The early reference to a clown prince gives you an idea of the Joker Goyer had in mind. Probably a lot like Cesar Romero's version or perhaps Jack Nicholson's, very much like the comics. Goyer's vision for Ra's al Ghul as an environmentalist is drawn from the comics. His vision for the Catwoman as a lunatic from the Narrows, also drawn from the comic book tropes. Goyer's Joker was going to be the clown prince of crime, but Nolan's Joker is of course a very unique villain. He's not a Joker or clown prince, he's the fool, Ephraim, perverter of the third cardinal virtue. He is explicitly satanic, drawn from the character of Lucifer in Milton's Paradise Lost. Where did Nolan get this idea from? We need to discuss major changes made to the movie's ending. They are of great importance to the second movie and the reconceptualizing of the Joker. Truth is, indirectly and accidentally, he owes David Goyer for the lead on this. Let's begin examining the Joker's diabolical roots by exploring the greatly revised ending to Batman Begins. Now, we all know how the movie version ends. It's pretty awkward when you think about it. Somehow, Batman flies into the train through one of its windows. Somehow, Raz manages to jam the controls with his own sword. Somehow, Batman blows up the train clearly in half so that somehow he can catch wind in his cape from inside the train and escape before Raz falls to his death. But somehow, Gordon is operating the Batmobile to blow up the tracks.
What do you need?
Can you drive stick?
Can you drive a tank armed with missile launchers and advanced computer targeting systems? Sure, Batman. Anyone can do that. Come on, Nolans. You're asking for us to suspend disbelief.
Started from...
I got it.
Can you operate a gyroscopically mounted motorcycle with missiles, 30 caliber machine guns, and advanced military technology? Sure, Batman. Anyone can do that. Whatever. I'm not writing this. Batman doesn't have to save Ra's because the collision course of the train was not due to Batman blowing up the monorail track. Gordon did that. So Batman's not also responsible for jamming the train's controls. Ra's al Ghul did that with his own sword. Is Gordon in any way responsible for Ra's al Ghul's death? He doesn't even know that the controls are jammed, and he's just trying to save Gotham from a gas attack since the train is headed straight to the water controls at Wayne Tower. And even if Gordon was Al Ghul's killer, it was justified and arguably unintentional in killing.
I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you.
Goyer's original ending inadvertently raised a moral issue. Batman is not supposed to kill, ever, but Goyer made a slip. In the original Goyer version, Batman actually kills Ra's al Ghul. Goyer apparently didn't notice that, and the Nolans clearly did. Let me explain. In the original Goyer version, Rachel and Gordon are trapped in an alley with the Scarecrow riding in on a horseback, and Rachel tases him as Batman enters in the alley with a Batmobile, and then lunatics start to close in. Batman uses his grappling gun to lift himself and Rachel to the rooftop for safety. How Gordon escapes, I really don't know. But after giving his famous "It's what I do that defines me" line, he swoops down onto the moving monorail, and Gordon is not involved from here on. Not only is Gordon in Goyer's script not involved in chasing Ra's al Ghul, the fight actually happens on the roof of the train, with Batman's cape and Ra's al Ghul's coat dramatically flailing in the wind. Batman uses his grappling gun to turn a railway switch on the side of the tracks. The train is now headed towards Wayne Plaza, not Wayne Tower. Al Ghul can't stop the train because he's outside of it, and Gordon doesn't need to blow up the monorail because the train is headed to a dead end, a steep, deadly drop where the monorail terminates. The final verbal exchange occurs when Al Ghul grips Batman's throat, uttering, "Are you afraid?" And Batman replies, "Yes, but not of you." He activates his cloak, which goes rigid and sweeps him from Ra's al Ghul's grip. Ra's screams as he rides the train to the monorail straight to his own plummet and death. Oh my effing G. Batman, you just killed Ra's al Ghul. I know many of you listeners might not spot that fact, and apparently David Goyer didn't either. You might be thinking, nah, he didn't kill Ra's al Ghul, he just let him die on the train. No, that's wrong. Imagine you see a monorail or trolley car filled with people rolling down a track, and you decide to switch a rail lever that changes the track so that the passengers go to a crash and certain death. Well, I got news for you. That makes you a terrorist, and you're going to get charged with murder. You definitely killed. You say, nah, I didn't kill them. The fall of the crash killed them. Does that remind anybody of a scene from the movie Collateral with Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx?
Oh no! Shit! You killed him?
No, I shot him. Bullets in the fall killed him.
That's a cheat. You killed. Similarly, Ra's was originally on a safe track to Wayne Tower, and Batman switched the track to a death drop. That's a kill. He acted in a manner that caused Raz's death, a manner of death the Batman could plainly have foreseen. You say, well, Batman was justified. He was saving a large number of people. Yeah, but he killed in order to do it. And a justified killing is still a killing. Batman has plenty of times where he'll be justified in using lethal force. He's just not supposed to do it. Goyer just landed face first in the famous trolley car problem, possibly the most famous modern thought experiment on the topic of killing versus letting die. Originally written by MIT moral professor Judith Jarvis Thompson. Now, we usually think that killing is worse than merely letting people die, but is it? Is it always?
Killing is making a choice.
Where are they?
Choose between one life or the other.
Imagine you see a trolley or monorail, like in Batman Begins, on a path to wipe out a family of 5 people. And now imagine all these people are trapped on the tracks, or maybe chained or something. They can't move. But you can pull a railway switch that diverts the car down the track that has only one person trapped on it. Should you pull that lever and kill the one rather than letting the 5 die? That's diabolical. Why are you asking me this? Well, I wanted to see what you would do, my dear listeners, and you didn't disappoint. You let 5 people die. Even to a guy like me, that's cold.
I wanted to see what you'd do. And you didn't disappoint. You let 5 people die. Even to a guy like me, that's cold.
How high do I need to boost the numbers for you to change your mind? Instead of 5, how about 100? 1,000? The whole city of Gotham? How about the whole dang planet? At some point, most of us are going to say, yeah, you should throw the switch, but that contradicts the general moral rule that killing somebody is worse than letting people die. Goyer, oh my effing G, you put the Batman on a trolley or monorail, and you actually had him throw a railway switch. That dive into the trolley car problem is about as explicit as it gets. But wait, you say, the numbers are decisive here. New rule, new rule. You're killing 1 to save 5 or more. Really?
You have all these rules, and you think they'll save you.
Try this famous variation on the problem. The fat man and the bridge. No, I'm not making this up. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da, fat man. Okay. According to this version, Skinny Boy sees a trolley coming that will run over and kill 5 people trapped on the tracks. Now, he's too skinny to stop the train, but luckily, there's a really, really fat man teetering on the edge of that bridge, and he's fat enough to stop the train with his carcass. So Skinny Boy can save the 5, but he has to push the extraordinarily fat man off the bridge in order to jam the wheels of the train with this fat man's huge carcass. Should Skinny Boy do it? It's 1 life for 5 again. Now, here again, most of us would say no. Well, then why was it okay to turn the switch in the original scenario? I thought the new rule was that the numbers were decisive. If numbers were actually justified killing over letting die, what would you do if the Joker asked you to kill one Weasley coal man lawyer in order to save a hospital full of innocent patients? Now, in the original script version of The Dark Knight, the Joker actually called the lawyer Coleman Reese on the Michael Engel program and disguised his voice as an old lady asking questions, whether 1 life is of more value than, say, 100. Coleman says, well, no. Pressed further, Joker asks whether he holds whether that holds if the 1 life was Coleman's own. Coleman holds steady. 100 takes precedence over the life of 1, even if it's his life. It's only then that the Joker announces in his real voice that he'll blow up a hospital unless the Gothamites kill Reese, and he adds playfully, of course you could just kill yourself, but that would be the noble thing to do, and you're a lawyer. Oh, wait. If it's better to turn the track in the first case of the trolley car scenario and kill 1 to save 5, then aren't the Gothamites doing the right thing by trying to kill Coleman Reese? The morally obligatory thing, perhaps? Worse, if it's not only better but morally obligatory in the first case, then isn't it not simply noble for Coleman Reese to kill himself, but morally obligatory? He's letting many die to save himself. Is Batman also sparing himself in a sense, refusing to take off his mask and letting people die?
You want this guy, you got one way. But you already know what that is. Just take off that mask. Let him come find you. How you gonna let a couple more people get killed while you make up your mind?
Similarly, what if Skinny Boy is about to push Fat Man off the bridge in order to save the 5, and Fat Man has a gun and decides to defend himself? He's saving 1 himself and letting 5 die. Is that morally permissible? Is it even permissible for him to resist or run away? Well, most of us would say, yeah, sure. Okay, new rule, self-defense rule. If the 1 life is your own, it counts for more than the 5. Really?
You have all these rules, and you think they'll save you.
Suppose the Fat Man is trapped on the tracks and he sees a trolley coming down his track to kill him, and he's trapped. He can divert the trolley with the lever that's right next to him, but that will turn it onto a new track where it will go down and kill 5 people who are also trapped. Can Fat Man pull that lever? You might be thinking, killing many to save yourself? Come on, man. No, okay, new rule. You can't kill 5. At most, you could kill 1 by flipping the switch. Each life counts equally, right?
You have all these rules, and you think they'll save you.
For example, if it's just 1 old man trapped on the opposing track, that man would be okay to flip the switch and save himself. Oh, really? Consider the human shield scenario. What if the Fat Man is about to shoot me and I hold up 1 innocent and have them take the bullet instead? That's still 1 for 1, right? Killing 1 just to save myself? You probably say, no, okay, that doesn't work either. Some of you are obviously pulling your hair out by now. There's no right answers for all these questions. Seriously? How are you going to decide? Want to just flip a coin? After all, a wise man once said, the world is cruel, and the only morality in the cruel world is chance, unbiased, unprejudiced, fair. Okay, new rule. It might be time to bite a bullet here. Let's put in a new proviso. You can't cause the death of even 1 innocent person simply to save 1, even if that 1 that you're saving is yourself. You think biting the bullet is going to help, folks? Here's a diabolical twist. What if instead the Fat Man is stuck on the tracks and the train is headed in a safe direction, and Skinny Boy is about to flip a switch that will send the train down the track to kill the Fat Man? Fat Man has a gun and he's an expert marksman. He can shoot Skinny Boy from a distance. Now, you might think that that's okay because Skinny Boy would not be an innocent under these circumstances, but let's add another twist. What if Skinny Boy is acting in ignorance? What if he hasn't seen the Fat Man down the tracks and there's too much noise for the Skinny Boy to hear Fat Man's warning to him by yelling? Let's make it even more interesting. What if Skinny Boy is not in a right state of mind? He's been driven mad by something like Ra's al Ghul's panic gas or something, so arguably he's morally innocent of his actions committed under derangement. Or perhaps we could put a wayward child into this scenario, and the child is just playing around and might be about to flip the switch and the Fat Man knows it. Let's spice it up one bit more. Instead of having the Fat Man on the track, let's put that innocent wayward kid there instead. Now, deranged Skinny Boy, in an altered state and deranged state of mind, he's about to flip the switch from the safe track to a track that will kill the young child trapped on it. Do you take the shot? Let's make it even more interesting. Batman isn't even sure that the train switch works. Maybe it's the wrong one, or maybe Batman has reason to believe that it's old and stuck and rusted. Can he still take the shot? Uh-oh, this is starting to sound familiar. When Harvey Dent is apparently about to shoot Gordon's son at the end of The Dark Knight, the script explicitly says he is in a deranged state of mind, and understandably so, given his physical and emotional pain and trauma. Some of you are saying, well, that's different. He was going to kill a kid. Nope. He was actually just putting the kid's life at risk. The coin toss was going to determine whether or not he shot Gordon's son. Some of you are objecting, Batman saved a kid. He had to go and kill Harvey Dent. Wrong again. Like our fat man who didn't know whether the train switch is even working, he's acting in ignorance. He doesn't know how that coin flip is going to turn out. The saddest scene in The Dark Knight happened so fast most of you didn't notice it, so I'll play it again here for you in slow motion. Harvey Dent's coin, it lands shiny side up. Dent was not going to kill the kid. Batman had to act in ignorance of this apparent fact. And in a sense, he made the right choice, but there's a sense in which he didn't. He killed somebody who's arguably innocent to save a child who was not going to be killed, but who seemed to be at risk. All of these issues, killing versus letting die, the good of the one versus the good of the many, the moral weight of self-defense versus the good of all, the moral difference between what you do versus what you merely allow, moral decisions made under uncertainty, the issue of whether one's life being one life being threatened has a special relationship to you, whether the person on the track is your parent or a child or significant other, the moral culpability of agents given their mental states, especially states of derangement and not being in control of their mental they all come up in the trolley car scenarios. David Goyer made a slip in his original script. He accidentally took us on a trip on Judith Jarvis Thompson's famous trolley car, but it was a fortunate slip, and this, I submit to you listeners, was a large part of what got the gears turning in the heads of the Nolan Brothers. The new vision of the Joker as diabolical as Satan, not so much a joker as a jester or fool, the aphrone in Greek, the enemy of the third cardinal virtue, and consequently a maximally unrighteous or aedicaiasine man to challenge the fourth cardinal virtue in the final movie. Now, in the Faber and Faber edition of the scripts, there's an interview between the three script writers, and the issue of the ending of Batman Begins and Batman's no-kill rule comes up. They joke, yeah, Batman got off on a technicality on this one. It's a huge technicality. The Nolans rewrote the ending, and it was awkward, but they had to do it to get out of Goyer's problem. It began here with the necessary revision to Goyer's ending. Batman threw a railway switch that violated his rule-based morality, and with that, Goyer is opening a Pandora's box, and once that box got opened, there really was no going back. So what exactly is the Nolan Brothers' moral theory? What's their view regarding phronesis in all these trolley car circumstances and other ones like it? Are they leading us down the path of moral despair to coin flipping and such?
The only sensible way to live in this world is without rules.
Are there some dilemmas that are truly impossible? Does phronesis simply fail when faced with diabolical dilemmas? The answer is going to surprise you, my dear listeners, and that's the topic of our next and final video. But let's summarize what we've learned today. Every character Goyer wrote and more was revised to fit the Batman Code, the pattern of Plato's Republic. Whether it's highlighting the appetitiveness of class, revising Rachel into the image of fortitude, and Batman as fortitude's champion, Roz and Thomas competing over true justice with the spirited element at work in both of them, and the Joker as an opponent of phronesis rather than a clown prince, Nolan constructed a backbone for his trilogy, Plato's Republic, the four cardinal virtues. In short, ladies and gentlemen, the Batman Code. With that, I bring Batman Begins to an end. My next lecture is likely going to be my favorite and my most philosophical, so bring your thinking caps. We'll see you here next time, here